Hey there guys, welcome back to the Doug and Racecraft YouTube channel. On this episode, we take the 82 GT to the track and give you a 2-for-1 on intake manifolds for a small block Ford. Okay guys, so like I said, this episode's gonna be kind of a 2-for-1. So this, obviously we get to take the 82 GT to the track, which was a lot of fun. Ended up going twice. And then the other side of this is sort of bang for your buck, bolt-on upgrades for a small block Ford. Engine Masters and a couple other shows do intake manifold comparisons. Engine Masters did this exact manifold comparison, the Performer 289. In that case, it was for a 351. So it was a Performer 351 versus the Performer RPM for a tall deck Windsor. The difference is, for people like you and I, horsepower numbers don't really mean anything because we don't have a way, at least I don't have a way readily available to be able to test A/B comparisons for horsepower, because obviously I don't have access to a dyno. So really all horsepower is for me is a nut swinging competition. So I mean, who can let their nuts hang the lowest, you know what I mean? So for a lot of people, myself included, it's a lot easier to get an A/B comparison because we don't have access to a dyno to take to the drag strip. There's a lot of things that play into elapsed time from, you know, the time it takes you to get from the starting line to the quarter mile or an eighth mile for some people. That obviously you'll improve ET if you pick up horsepower, but the one way to know for sure that you're picking up power is the mile per hour. So if you pick up mile per hour, that means that you gain power somewhere along the line. So that's what we're gonna do here. In this video, I'm gonna show you an A/B test from the Performer 289 to the Performer RPM. The Performer RPM just has a little bit higher of a power curve, probably more suited to this combination, as I said in the last video. Luckily, the weather for both nights, it was 2 weeks apart. They were both on a Friday night. The weather was pretty similar for both nights, which we really lucked out on. So this is probably gonna be as close as I can get to a scientific test, A/B comparison with weather and everything, because there's so many variables at play. Like I said, the big determining factor is gonna be mile per hour. So if we pick up mile an hour, we know that we made an improvement. And I'm gonna do that for a couple other things along this build as well, but this is the first thing that came to mind that, you know, like I said, you watch these shows on YouTube and on TV and they give you a power number, but what good is horsepower if you don't know what it's gonna do for your combination? So I split this video up into two parts. The first part is gonna be the first time we went to the track. The combination for that was the same that you saw in all the build videos. GT40 heads on a stock high output 302 short block, the Performer 289 intake manifold. I did end up switching to a Holley 750 HP carburetor instead of the 650 that I had on it before. The Ram Spec 1 clutch, the basically stock T5, and the 410s in the 8.8 rear end. Suspension, everything's all stock. I have the Tokiko adjustable shocks. They didn't really help me out a lot in this situation. And I was running on a Hoosier 26 by 9.5 15 tire. Obviously the slick helps out a lot, and that gets rid of a lot of variation that you would see, because a lot of the variation you would see in ET would most likely come from the 60 foot. And then for the second combination, I ended up going from the 1.5" Headman headers that I had on it to 1 5/8 Flowtech headers. I wish I would have been able to do, you know, a comparison between the headers A/B and then do the intake manifold A/B, but it didn't really work out that way. So the initial test had the 1.5" tubes with the Performer 289, and the second test had the 1 5/8 tubes with the Performer RPM. So without further ado, let's get into the video. It bogged a little bit on the hit, but otherwise it felt pretty good. We'll see what you ran. All right, so we were in a 1338 at 102.9, but it went 189 to the 60 foot, which is actually pretty good. turn up the launch control, or we'll turn up the two-step a little bit, and we'll see if she'll go a little bit faster. So that time we picked up almost 0.2 of a second. We went 13:22 at 103.5. And we cut even more time to the 60 foot. We went 183 to the 60 foot, which is pretty good. Still bogged a little bit. I'm gonna watch the video from the hit just to confirm my suspicions. And then we're gonna turn the two-step up a little bit, check the tire pressure, and we'll make another pass. Glue down on the track before I made that pass. Probably should have turned up a little bit higher than I did. I left it 4,100 RPM that time, so I want to get jiggy with it, but I don't want to break it either. Thank you very much.
What car is this?
82 Mustang.
It looks just like that.
Oh, we went 1298. Oh my God. Went 172 to the 60 foot. This car is hauling ass. Okay, so one thing I'd like to point out for those people that aren't very hip on drag racing, I'm talking about picking up tenths of a second, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it takes a lot to make up a tenth. To get, at a 12-second caliber car, it takes roughly 10 to 20 horse to pick up a tenth, and something like that to pick up 1 mile per hour. And obviously the faster you go, the more power it takes to cut ET off of your elapsed time. Another thing for people that aren't very hip on drag racing, my reaction time, the time it takes me from when the light turns green to actually leave, that is not figured into ET, elapsed time. A lot of people get confused on that, thinking that if you're sitting at the light for, say, 2 seconds, I'm sitting at the light for 2 seconds and I run a 13-second pass, it takes me 13 seconds to get from the start to the finish. That is not a 15-second ET, that's a 13-second ET. Where you would see that reaction time is the margin of victory versus one lane versus the other. And that obviously takes into account the other guy's reaction time as well, time it takes to get down there and everything like that. We'll save that for another video. So now for the second part of this video. Like I said, it's going from the Performer 289 intake manifold to the Performer RPM, and the header swap going from the Hedmans to the Flotex. I ended up doing this intake manifold swap the day of going to the track, so I didn't really have time to get this combination sorted out. I should have taken more time and gotten the combination sorted and everything. The problem is I didn't think the intake manifold would change that much of the carburetor tune-up, but it did. It changed quite a lot. Obviously with the bigger intake runners versus the RPM versus the Performer 289, dropped manifold vacuum quite a bit, so I think it lost 2 or 3 inches of mercury of vacuum at idle. So the power valve had to be changed, and then not only that, but the jets were also wrong. Another problem that I was suffering with, I didn't really know until after the fact, was my fuel pump wasn't really keeping up. So I'll talk more about that in the next video whenever I get around to doing that, because the fuel pump's already done. I went from the mechanical to the electric fuel pump, and that did fix the problem. I ended up, to get the air fuel mixture reading the spark plugs where I wanted it, the jets that came in that carburetor were 71s in the primaries and 74s in the secondaries. To get the mixture where I wanted it, where it would run clean and it would run hard through the entire RPM band, I think I ended up having 84s and 87s, which is quite a large jump. Talked to Holly's tech line, super knowledgeable people, and basically what they had told me was that if you have to jump more than 10 sizes from what came in the carburetor, either that carburetor is too big for your combination or you don't have enough fuel system. Turns out it ended up being not enough fuel system. It's up for debate whether a 750 is too big for a 302. Works good for me, may not work good for you. So the problem was I had to get my combinations sorted out. So it took me 3 or 4 passes to get it dialed into the point where it would leave hard out of the hole, not fall on its face super hard, like you can see here. And get it to go down the track drama free. So by the time I was able to do that, it was later in the night, pretty much an hour left in the track session. And the track pep just wasn't really there for me to be able to launch the car as hard as I wanted to get it out of the hole, to basically, you know, go down as fast as I can. So here's the second part of that video, and we'll talk to you after we get done with that. Goddamn, I don't know what it ran, but that was pretty fun. That was a good time. Thank you very much. 1297. So we went 1297 at 106. So we picked up basically 2 miles an hour from where we were with the 1.5-inch headers and the Performer 289. But I lost basically a 1/10 to the 60 foot. Yeah, so I basically lost a 1/10 to the 60 foot, and I don't want to launch it that much harder because I just don't want to break anything. So I think at that time I launched it like 4,700. Okay guys, so what ended up happening here, the reason it went a 1/10 slower to the 60 foot was because it ended up spinning. Like I said before, the track prep just wasn't as good by the time I got my shit figured out. So tried launching it as hard as I wanted to, ended up spinning tires, so it went slower to the 60 foot. I'm pretty confident that had I at least gone to the 60 foot with what I had before, the 172, I think I went 189, I think, to the 60 foot this time around. Had I been able to go faster to the 60 foot, I'm pretty confident that it would have cracked off a 1270 or, you know, 1280 at least. So I'll show you the clip of that really quick here. So as you can see, it loaded the tire up, collapsed the suspension, and then it all happened too fast. The tire started to spin. It unloaded the suspension and then started porpoising the rear end, which obviously doesn't help. It's just wasted energy that could be used to drive the car forward. It's being wasted on energy in the suspension. So like I said all along, the biggest improvement that I saw with this combination was the intake manifold. The header, obviously, I was right at the ragged edge of having too much power for the 1.5-inch tube. So the intake manifold really was the best bang for the buck. I think that intake manifold to buy it new is $300, give or take. It's out of stock basically everywhere right now. Luckily I got a good deal on it used. Just traded some parts around. From what I've seen, basing off of what I saw on Engine Masters, it picked up this manifold versus the Performer 351, 289, whatever. It picks up basically everywhere over the curve, and obviously a lot more up top as well. I think the curve gains were somewhere around 20 horse, which is quite a lot for the entire sweep. Not losing any torque is also a big deal. Like I said, I'm going to take it back to the track at some point in the near future. Hopefully we get a nice cool night before it gets too cold, so that I can make a good pass, get the glory pass. It should go 1270s, 1280s, I would think. The mile an hour, so it ran 106 mile an hour, should run about 107 mile an hour, which is good enough for a 1270, 1280 using the horsepower calculator. So that's gonna do it for this video, you guys. If you did like this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please go ahead and let me know down below or send me an email, dugganracecraft@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram @dugganracecraft. Also, one last thing before I forget, we got a new addition coming to the channel. I'm picking up another car. So those close to me know what's coming. We're gonna go ahead and get this Cobra finished up the next week. I'll get the video out on that, finishing that up. And then we're gonna go and pick up the new project car. Some of you guys are gonna like it, I'm gonna love it, but we'll show you when it comes to it. So that's gonna do it for this video, you guys. Y'all take care now.